Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm the Fantasy Football Strategist, and in today's video, I have 5 late-round running backs who are going to be worth their weight in gold for you in 2024. Each one of these running backs can be had for you in the 9th round or later. Please remember to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The first running back on this list is Panthers running back Jonathan Brooks. So, he was drafted in the 2nd round of the 2024 NFL Draft, which is really impressive because not only was he the first running back selected, as well as the only second-round running back, he suffered an ACL tear. That's right. After an ACL tear, he was still selected in the 2nd round. That should tell you everything you need to know about what NFL teams, specifically the Panthers at least, thought of Jonathan Brooks. When we look at his college production, you'll notice that he didn't do anything in his freshman or sophomore year. Well, he was behind a couple of no-name guys, Roschon Johnson and Bijan Robinson. So, when you think about it, there's basically no running back. There's a couple in the NFL that would have gotten some carries with Bijan Robinson in town, but he's one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. So, I really wouldn't use that as a slight to him, because when he did step foot on the field this past season as a junior, he absolutely lit it up. In only 10 games, he had over 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. He also had 25 receptions for 286 receiving yards. And when you think about it, running backs generally in college aren't given a high target share, even if they're capable receivers. So, while he's not what I would say a passing game weapon, in the sense of being deployed on advanced routes and especially down the field, he is very, very good in the screen game and being used on flats. He can run a Texas route too, but he is one of the better running backs at creating yards after the catch, which is part of the reason why they set up so many screens for him. When we look at the Panthers depth chart, they have 2023 first overall pick Bryce Young. He did suffer this past season because Adam Thielen was his best receiver. Chuba Hubbard was the best running back. Tommy Tremble was the best tight end. He had DJ Chark for a couple games, but essentially there was no talent around him. They also had Frank Reich, and they fired him mid-season, so there was no coaching stability. I definitely wouldn't hold that against him, but I think this offense is going to take a massive step up this season. So I think Bryce Young is going to be fine. They obviously drafted Jonathan Brooks. And now, while the depth chart has Chuba Hubbard at the starting running back, this is from ESPN. It's not an official depth chart. Jonathan Brooks is going to be the featured running back in this offense. Then they have Deontay Johnson, who they recently acquired. He's going to be a fine wide receiver one for them. Adam Thielen is great from the slot. Xavier Legette is going to be used at the X as a vertical weapon. He's more of a straight line type of receiver. You're going to ask him to do crossers and drags and streaks, curls too. But you're not going to use a lot of cutting routes with him. Like I said, he's a straight line athlete. Then they have Tommy Tremble, who's a fine tight end, but they did draft J.T. Sanders, who's actually, coincidentally, Jonathan Brooks' college teammate. So overall, this offense is looking better just from a skill position standpoint. But even more importantly, they hired Dave Canales. So he is a quarterback guru who has been in charge of the recent upgrades in production for Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield the past 2 seasons. If there's anyone on this earth that's going to be able to help him, it's going to be Dave Canales, which in turn will help Jonathan Brooks. One thing to think about, take a look at the Buccaneers running backs, or running back. Rachaad White was used as a featured back in the system, and he finished as the running back 5 in a full PPR format, reasonably close depending on your league format, but the point is, despite Rachaad White not actually being a very good runner of the football at least, even though he's good in the receiving game, he was used as a featured back. He is going to start the year a little bit slow, but he is going to finish the year really strong, and he's going to win a lot of people fantasy championships. Think about Breece Hall, for instance, this past year. He started off a little bit slow. You saw him get gassed on that long run in Week 1 against the Bills. But as the season went on, he really returned to form. I think you're going to see the exact same thing with Jonathan Brooks because he is supremely talented. You don't get drafted in the second round of the NFL draft coming off an ACL tear as a running back if you're not talented. Looking at where he's going, he's being drafted 99th overall off the board at the 903 as the RB25. I strongly believe he's going to outperform this ADP. He's going to start out the year slow. If you look at, besides Adrian Peterson back in 2012, running backs coming off ACL tears are generally going to start off slow, but if they're talented, which Jonathan Brooks is supremely talented, they'll absolutely pick up the pace of play. Now, I don't have advanced stats from the NFL to show you, obviously, because he's a rookie, but his missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt were all among the league leaders in FBS this past season, and his missed tackles forced and elusiveness rating this past season was among the top 20 of running backs. So that should tell you everything you need to know in the sense that he's very shifty, he's good after contact, and he's going to get you the extra yards, which is going to equate to extra fantasy points for you in 2024. Draft this guy in the 9th round, and what I would recommend is to make sure that if you're going to take him, that you have at least 2 other running backs that you're going to be able to plug and play regularly in your lineup while you wait for him to be able to pick things up. But man, when he gets going, he is going to get going. He is going to be used as a workhorse in this offense. The second player on this list is Broncos running back Javonte Williams. Standing at 5'10", 212, he has a 30.4 BMI, which is the requisite size for a workhorse at the running back position. He's still only 24.2 years old. Now, he did not have the season we were hoping for this past year, but if you remember, in 2022, he had a devastating knee injury. We're talking a multi-ligament tear. That's going to take some time to come back from. But recent reports have been saying that he's performed really well and looks sharp in camp. And while Sean Payton doesn't per se have any loyalty to him, I think what they're going to do is use him and essentially just wear him out and then not re-sign him. Which, if you're in dynasty leagues, is whatever. You're going to get maybe one good year out of him and then hope he finds a home somewhere else. But for 2024, that's exactly what you want. In his first year, he finished as the RB17, and I think we can look for him to finish around the RB18 to 20 this season, but he's being drafted later than that, which, in my opinion, makes him a good value. When we look at the Broncos' depth chart, their quarterback is rookie Bo Nix, who, in my opinion, was a little bit overdrafted and just drafted for need, essentially. But it's been reported widely that head coach Sean Payton wanted him as the quarterback, and he, from what I believe, thinks he's going to be kind of like a Drew Brees. I think he's going to be a very, very poor man's Drew Brees, but nonetheless, they're definitely going to want to run to take the load off of Bo Nix. And I think Javonte Williams is going to be the main beneficiary of this. They did draft Audric Estime in the NFL draft this year, so I do think he is going to split some carries, but I do think that they're going to use Javonte Williams as the main back in a rotation. Then when we look at the talent around him, Courtland Sutton is a fine X receiver. Josh Reynolds is fine. Marvin Mims didn't really do much. He had a couple deep catches, and he was good in the return game this past year, but maybe we'll see some growth out of him. And then Adam Troutman is really a nothing burger at tight end. They do have Greg Dulcich, who is very good when he's healthy. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy very much, honestly. But as I said earlier, there was a report very recently in which Javonte Williams is stated to have looked as real sharp as they hit the field for their first acclimation practice. And that's exactly what we want to hear, especially considering they have some competition. I think Jaleel McLaughlin is going to get some passing down work and be used sparingly in the running game. And I personally think that Samaje Perine is definitely going to be a roster cut. But all in all, they are absolutely going to want to run the ball as much as humanly possible because they do not want to expose Bo Nix, especially given the very, very poor receiving core in which they have this season. When we look at where Javonte Williams is going in drafts, he's going as the pick 106 or the 910 as the RB28. I think he's going to finish somewhere around the RB20, so I do think he's going to be a bit of a value for a year. even if he's not going to be an RB1, I definitely don't think he's going to be an RB1. But value is value, and especially considering he's not going to be your first or hopefully second running back drafted, I think he can be a very, very solid RB3 for you. Potential weekly flex play. When we look at a couple metrics from the combine, he has 72nd percentile burst score, 90th percentile agility score, and 69th percentile strength in terms of at least bench reps. But I don't think we got to see that on full display this past season with him coming back from a multi-ligament knee injury. But I think he is going to be much more recovered and back to form this season. But even with that in mind, he did finish 9th in breakaway run rate with a 5.5% and 8th in total breakaway runs with 12. So he did have some of his explosion. I just think the Russell Wilson experiment didn't work out. Their backups were even worse than Russell Wilson. But I think with them having Bo Nix, I do think he's going to perform a little bit better than at least the backup quarterbacks. I figure he'll probably be somewhere similar to where Russell Wilson was this past season, if not a little bit better or a little bit worse. But I think the thing is, Javonte Williams himself is going to be a lot better and going to be able to return back to form for you guys. Essentially, in the 10th round, or at least just 2 picks before it, I think he is a great value, and I think he's going to finish somewhere around the RB20 this season. The third player on this list is, in my opinion, a supreme value here. So we have Dolphins running back Raheem Mostert. He is a bit of a marvel, seeing as at age 31 he did have an RB5 season, and now while I don't think that that's going to repeat, I think when you see where he's being drafted, he's still a fantastic value in it. I think it's just due to age that people are worried, and I think it's going to be like a Derrick Henry thing where we see year by year where he's at. But he's on the Dolphins, one of the best offenses to be a part of, and at least rushing-wise, he was the featured back this past season. And looking at his performance, I don't see any reason to think that this isn't going to be the case again in 2024. Granted, his touchdowns are absolutely, very likely to come down, but he is still a threat for 10-plus touchdowns. And when you see where he's being drafted, if he's able to get anywhere close to 10, or potentially even a little bit more, he is going to massively outperform his ADP. So when we look at the Dolphins depth chart, Tua was just signed to an extension. He's a rhythm passer who, when the scheme is working, and this scheme's going to work, is very efficient and on target with his throws, and he's going to keep the chains moving. But so are the running backs in this amazing running game. So Raheem Mostert should receive most of the carries, at least a good chunk of the bulk of the carries. They are, however, going to sprinkle in Devon Achane and rookie 4th-round pick Jalen Wright. So I do think his RB5 finish is pretty obviously not going to repeat. But I still think he's going to be the main back, at least running the ball, and going to get receptions here and there. Then, obviously, they have Tyreek Hill, one of the best receivers in the league. Jalen Waddle, one of the best second receivers and a very, very good receiver. They signed OBJ. We'll see about that. He's effective here and there. He provides good explosive plays from time to time, but unfortunately for him and for fans everywhere, including myself, he hasn't really been the same after multiple injuries, but still a very solid third receiver. And they signed Jonnu Smith, who is a very, very good blocking tight end and a solid receiver in his own right. So overall, this is going to be very challenging for defenses to stop. It's really the Shanahan scheme, but it's Mike McDaniel's touch on it. They use a lot of motion to get their receivers free releases. It's just going to be probably the most dangerous and explosive offense in football. It would not shock me if they finish as the number 1 offense this year. And I think that Raheem Mostert is going to be a beneficiary of this. Per a recent article, Raheem Mostert believes that he could be an Olympics alternate, even at 32. I believe him. This guy has track speed. So this is what I was talking about. He's being drafted at pick 109 or the 1001 as the RB30. Now, I strongly believe he's not going to be the RB5 again, but I also don't think he's going to be the RB30. I think we didn't really see any signs of him slowing down at all. And he really hasn't had very much usage throughout his career, so he doesn't have the normal wear and tear that you would see in running backs. And if you look at some of the metrics here, he is a very good athlete. So he has 92nd percentile 40-yard dash speed, along with the 85th percentile speed score, a 97th percentile burst score, and a 76th percentile agility score. So overall, a very good athlete at the running back position. And being a very good athlete is directly correlated to success at the RB position. You will hardly ever see somebody who is a very poor athlete at the running back position be one of the top running backs. That just really doesn't happen. And at his RB30 price tag, I think he is one of the best values at running back that you're going to see. As far as where he should go, the range is absolutely wild. I could see him being the RB15 to about 25 at the worst, but I still don't see any way, unless he gets hurt, that he finishes as the RB30. Even if you factor in touchdown regression from 18, this is going to be an explosive offense. He just signed an extension this offseason too, so it's not as if they don't plan on using him. If anything, they're going to use him as much as humanly possible, and once he is kind of burned out, then they'll just toss him to the side and use Jalen Wright and Devon Achane. So draft this guy, and barring injury, there's probably no way that he finishes as the RB30. The fourth player on this list is Arizona Cardinals running back Trey Benson. So at 6'2", 216, he's slightly under the 30.0 benchmark for BMI that you would want ideally for a workhorse back. But he was selected at the top of the third round, and he's just 22 years old. So not particularly young for a prospect, but definitely not old either. In 2021, he suffered a gruesome knee injury while at Oregon. It completely derailed his freshman season, but as soon as 2022, when he transferred to Florida State, he absolutely took off. He had over 900 yards in both his sophomore and junior season, and had 9 touchdowns in his sophomore year and 15 in his junior year. He is very, very good. He has lightning speed, does not get caught from behind, possesses a nasty stiff arm, and is one of the more elusive running backs despite being a very bulky, top-heavy back, really. You'll notice that his upper body is very, very big, which helps him with that stiff arm. He was used in a committee, but that's really what Florida State does. They don't generally give one running back every carry, so I wouldn't really use that against him, but he's also a very solid receiver. And like I said with Jonathan Brooks, running backs, unless they are absolutely amazing, are generally not going to be used that much in the receiving game. And just like with Jonathan Brooks, I don't think Trey Benson is a receiving weapon, but I do think he's actually a little bit better than Jonathan Brooks in the receiving game. This past season, he had over 200 yards on 20 receptions, and he housed one from long distance too. Like I said, he does not get caught from behind, but he can be used on wheel routes, flat routes, screens, Texas routes. This guy is very solid, has soft hands, and he can contort his body to make over-the-shoulder catches. Very, very solid in the receiving game. So some recent news. Trey Benson has been adjusting to life in the NFL thanks to his notepad. So the article is about the fact that he is absolutely about business. He is taking this very, very seriously. He's taking notes, and he is trying to be the best running back that he can be, and observing James Conner among others, including running back Michael Carter. And one other note, he's barely ever fumbled in college. So he has very good ball handling, so when he gets on the field this year, you shouldn't expect any fumbles, really. And looking at the Cardinals' depth chart, you have Kyler Murray coming off an ACL tear suffered in 2022. He came back in the latter half of the season this past year. He actually looked pretty good, and I think a full offseason recovered from that, he's going to look even better. So they're set at quarterback. He does have James Conner in front of him. And now, while we cannot predict injuries, I will mention that in James Conner's 7-year career, he has never, ever played more than 13 games in a season. Never. He's 29 years old now, And while I do expect him to be the lead back, I definitely think that Trey Benson is going to get, first of all, he's going to split reps with him, so he's already going to have some value anyways. But I do think he's going to get some starts here. And when he does, he is so talented, I don't think he's relinquishing that job. So if James Conner does get hurt earlier in the year, I think this is going to be his job, and I don't think he's going to give it back. Then they also drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., so he's going to be a solid X wide receiver. He does have positional versatility, but he's generally going to be the DeAndre Hopkins of this offense. Michael Wilson's fine. Greg Dortch, Zay Jones are role players. They're not going to do too much. Trey McBride is a very, very good tight end. But overall, this offense is going to score a lot of points. And I think they're going to want to have a balanced approach this season. And when Trey Benson sees the field, he is absolutely explosive. So when we look at where Trey Benson's going, he's going 132nd overall at the 11-12, so basically the 12th round, as the RB38. I absolutely think he's going to outperform this ADP. I think he's going to outperform this ADP even if James Conner somehow stays healthy for all 16 games, which, once again, in his 7-year career, he has never done once. He has never played more than 13 games, and he's 29. He had a looking at Trey Benson, he is absolutely explosive. He had a 4.39 40-yard dash, which is in the 97th percentile among running backs. And his 116.3 speed score is in the 98th percentile. This guy's 216 pounds, and he actually ran at the combine, so he really is 216 pounds. It wasn't like he just drank a bunch of water and then sat out of the drills. He's actually that big. He is going to be impossible to stop in the open field. One other thing to consider, and while this is from 2022, his 0.51 forced missed tackles per attempt set a 10-year record for PFF. He is insanely elusive, and he does this while having 4.39 speed with a massive stiff arm at 216 pounds. Once he sees the field, he is not letting James Conner see that many carries. He is going to run away from this job as soon as he is allowed to, and he's going to get reps from the beginning. This guy is going to outperform his RB38 price tag, and in a worst-case scenario, he's probably an RB28 if James Conner is able to stay healthy the whole season, but he could very easily be in the teens if James Conner gets hurt relatively early into the year, and he's going to run away with that job as soon as he's given the chance. The final player on this list is Pittsburgh Steelers running back Jaylen Warren. So standing at 5'8", 207 pounds, he has a 31.5 BMI, which is the requisite size for being a workhorse running back. He was undrafted, so he doesn't have the investment that you would prefer, but he's still under 26 years old. 28, by the way, is the end of the peak production curve for running backs. So he still has plenty of time, and he's never actually had that much usage in his NFL career, so the wear and tear in which you might see from a running back that's almost 26 years old is not there for him. And he had 74 targets this past season. 74. He is much better as a receiver than Najee Harris, and he's going to split reps with Najee Harris on the ground. So I think he actually has more fantasy upside than Najee Harris, who's actually going ahead of him in drafts. When we look at the depth chart, the quarterback position, while not ideal, both of these guys are better than Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph. Let's be honest here. Russell Wilson isn't the best, and neither is Justin Fields, but both of these guys are better than what they had this past season. And on a per-touch basis, Jaylen Warren was actually one of the best running backs in the NFL. This guy is supremely talented and vastly underrated. He obviously has to compete with Najee Harris, but there's actually been some news in training camp that Jaylen Warren could compete for the top dog role in this backfield, and with him being drafted after Najee Harris, that could be a very, very good value for you. Then we have George Pickens as their wide receiver 1. He's very good. He's a vertical X wide receiver, so he's going to get deep passes from time to time and have big blow-up games and then kind of quiet games. If you look at his career, you'll see a lot of that, including his, I believe it was 4 for 195 and 2 game this past season. Van Jefferson was signed. He's nothing really. I do like Roman Wilson, and despite getting a ton of buzz during the Senior Bowl, he wasn't drafted quite as early as I would have thought. But if there's one thing that we know about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and even as a Ravens fan, I hate to say this, they are very successful at drafting wide receivers. So I think he's going to be very solid for them. I liked him anyways. It's very unfortunate from my perspective that he went to Pittsburgh. But then they also have Pat Freiermuth, who's a very, very solid tight end. So overall, this offense should be much better than it was this past season. And now, while I don't like Arthur Smith as a head coach in any way, shape, or form, as an OC, he has a pretty good track record. He was the Titans' offensive coordinator when Derrick Henry was in his peak, and boy, was he good. And if Tyler Algier was just a little bit better, you would have seen a lot more consistency from the RB position throughout his tenure. He just makes poor personnel decisions, but fortunately for Jaylen Warren, Mike Tomlin is not going to allow him to have any say over that. Believe me. So with the news that Jaylen Warren could overtake him as the lead back, and at worst is going to receive most of the passing work, and at the very least split running touches, he is going to be a massive value for you. Just wait till you see where he's going. So this guy is being drafted at pick 107 overall at the 9-11, so essentially in the 10th round. He's going off the board as the RB29. This guy just finished as the RB22 this past season. So he's being drafted lower than he performed this past season, and there's recent news that he may overtake Najee Harris for the lead back spot in this offense, which should be much more efficient with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields than it was with the likes of Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. But look at some of these advanced stats. Now, when I tell you he is one of the most underrated running backs, take a look at this. So in terms of yards per route run, he had 1.58 this past season, which was 9th among running backs. He is very, very good after the catch. He also had an 82.4% catch rate, which was also 9th in the NFL. So very, very capable as a receiver. But that's not all. He's a very talented runner too. His 4.9 true yards per attempt was good for 6th in the NFL. His 5.5 yards per touch were 7th in the NFL. His 31.9% juke rate was 1st. That means he is extremely shifty, perhaps one of the shiftiest running backs in the NFL. Then his 67 evaded tackles were 5th, and that's considering he was splitting running work. He still finished 5th in evaded tackles. If he had been given more touches, he probably would have been much higher than that, and he was still 5th. Then his 8.1% breakaway run rate was good for 3rd in the NFL. That's runs of 15 or more yards, so incredibly impressive. Then his 12 total breakaway runs was good for 8th. So this guy is an amazing runner of the ball and a very capable receiver. And this guy's being drafted as the RB29 when he finished as the RB22, and he didn't have tremendous touchdown luck either. So take advantage of that. So to conclude, 5 running backs who are being drafted in the 9th round or later that I think are supreme values for you. First, we have Jonathan Brooks, drafted in the 2nd round in a Dave Canales offense. He's going to pick up some steam later on in the year and win a lot of people fantasy championships. Just once again, make sure that you have 2 other capable running backs while you wait for him to really pick up steam. Then the next running back is Broncos running back Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams is coming into his 2nd year after that multi-ligament knee injury, so I think he's going to be a lot more healthy, and he was among the league leaders in both breakaway runs and breakaway run rate. He was top 10 in both. So he's going to be a little bit more explosive. The Broncos are going to want to run the ball as much as they can to take the load off of Bo Nix, and I think he's going to outperform his ADP. Then the 3rd running back is Dolphins running back Raheem Mostert. He's being drafted as the RB30 after finishing as the RB5. Now, while his 18 rushing touchdowns that led to him being the RB5 are very unlikely to repeat, assuming he stays healthy, or reasonably healthy, if he plays 12 games, he's very likely to definitely beat that RB30 price tag for you. Take advantage of that. This guy is in an explosive offense, Mike McDaniel's offense, that's the exact same as it was this past season. And at worst, he's going to get a couple carries siphoned away by Jalen Wright. But they just signed him to an extension, and he is a supreme athlete and very, very explosive. I think he's going to outperform his ADP for sure. The next running back is Arizona Cardinals running back Trey Benson. Remember that he set a PFF 10-year record with 0.51 forced missed tackles per attempt in 2022. He possesses 97th percentile 40-yard dash speed and a 98th percentile speed score. This guy doesn't get caught from behind, is extremely elusive, and possesses a nasty stiff arm. He's behind James Conner, who's 29, and in 7 years of playing has never played more than 13 games in a season. He's going to get reps right away in the running game and as a receiver as well. But the moment that he is able to be the lead back, he is not relinquishing that job. He is going to outperform his RB38 ADP. And the fifth player on this list was Pittsburgh Steelers running back Jaylen Warren. Remember, he is a supremely talented runner and receiver. There's been buzz that he's going to overtake Najee Harris as the lead back, and after finishing as the RB22, he's being drafted as the RB29. There is no reason to believe that he's going to perform worse this year. If anything, he's probably going to perform better. Take advantage of that ADP. So those are 5 running backs being drafted in round 9 or later that I believe are going to outperform their ADP in 2024. But what do you think? Do you agree with my list? Disagree? Who do you think being drafted in round 9 or later is going to outperform their ADP in 2024? Please let me know in the comment section and let me know why. With that being said, I'm the Fantasy Football Strategist, your NFL breaking news source, and the Dynasty and Redraft implications behind said breaking news. I am building a library of information with which you can use to dominate your Redraft and Dynasty leagues in 2024 and beyond. Please remember to like and subscribe. It would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and have a good day.